that we will win!
I believe 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 that we will win!
From the cities and the farmlands to countries full of men, in the buses waiting, the union forever defending our rights. Down with the black leg, the workers unite, with our brothers and our sisters united for our land. There is power in the union. Our university! Our university! Our university! Our university! Our university!
We say organize!
We say organize!
Stephen 2, get down! Cambridge is a union town! Stephen 2,
Get down! Cambridge is a union town! Stephen 2, get down! Cambridge is a union town! Stephen 2, get down! Cambridge is a union town!
Good afternoon to you all. It's fantastic to see so many people here and still full of energy after a very intense 8 days of strike action. It's been a difficult period for every single one of us here, and I'm sure you'll all join me in extending our thanks to all those people who have worked tirelessly behind the scenes to make this possible. From organising teach-outs to waterproofing placards, none of this could have happened without you, so thank you very much. Today, I am here to talk about those of us who are likely to have been impacted most by this strike action, although many of them will not have said a single word about that fact. Today we celebrate and we fight for our disabled staff, who are left most vulnerable to this university's obsession with excessive workloads and ever-increasing casualisation. It is not an exaggeration to state that the ridiculous workloads which are commonplace at this university are not just unhealthy, but actively cause many members of this institution to become mentally ill. There exists a toxic culture which encourages us all to actively compete with one another instead of cooperating and coordinating to modernise, improve, decolonise, disarm and demilitarise this university. Staff from postgrads to postdocs to professors are made to feel that to take a holiday or to have a weekend spent away from their desk is to fail. Is it any wonder that so many of us leave this university with mental illnesses we didn't have when we arrived, or find that our mental health issues are only getting worse, with no time or space to rest and to recover? On Friday, I stood next to the Vice-Chancellor as he announced the launch of Access Able, a much welcome and much needed online platform with detailed accessibility information about the university's buildings. Unfortunately, when I confronted the Vice-Chancellor, he was unable to provide details on how he would make this university accessible to all the staff on the picket lines who were just outside.
Shame!
The Disability Resource Centre and its chronic underfunding is just one example of how this university fails to support and recognise its disabled members. Each advisor is responsible for 700 disabled students, the size of an entire secondary school. This is damaging not just to all the students who are unable to access support, but also to the advisors who are continually overworked and overstretched. One advisor, who is disabled herself, spoke to me. She's not a member of UCU, but has decided to take action short of a strike in solidarity with striking staff. She told me how guilty she feels for trying to work to contract, and that this amounts to only 60% of her usual workload. The reality is that, like many disabled people here, the university has been relying upon her free labour to make this university follow its legal obligations that it should be paying for.
Yes, right.
And it is making us ill. 2 advisors just this term, have had to take leave due to work-related stress. Today, another emailed me, cancelling our meeting tomorrow because their doctor told them that stress has made them too sick to work. This is just one area of the university, but it is merely one example of a much wider problem, and it is not okay. Today we stand together and demand a radical shift in the way the university approaches its disabled members. We demand reasonable adjustments. We demand fair pay for our staff. And we demand healthy workloads that involve everyone at this university in an inclusive and accessible environment that fights for us all. Thank you very much. Keep on fighting.
Thank you to everyone who came along to the Teach Outs. My background is that I'm a physicist who became a neuroscientist, who now calls themselves a data scientist, whatever that means. And one of the reasons that I do the work that I do now is because I'm frustrated with the sort of overselling of basic research. Basic research is really valuable, but research that's going to actually improve the lives of individual people right now is also incredibly important. And one of those examples is a study that I run at the Turing that we're currently co-creating. You are welcome to join, everybody is invited, to understand how autistic people navigate their sensory environments in the real world. Autistic people, it has been studied in psychology laboratories, have sensory processing differences, but what we don't know is what about the environment is disabling to those people as a result of those sensory processing differences. And one example of this, of an accommodation that we made, was that the Turing Institute, if you ever come down to visit us in London in the British Library, it's a very bright place. It's very white, it looks very sort of space age, and it's too bright for members of our focus groups, for our collaborators, to be able to participate in the discussions. So you know what we did? We turned the lights out. There was still ambient light, people could still see, but now everybody was able to participate. And so, yeah. And this is the point of the study. It is not a study of the other. It is not a study of how people are different. It is an educational experience for neurotypical people to learn what they can do to improve the lives of their fellow co-workers, friends, colleagues, and family members. Some of the conversations that we had on the picket line, I'm just looking at my phone to remind myself of them, centered around individual people who experience disability, who are disabled, or who are neurodiverse. They have to advocate for themselves far too much. And it is the responsibility of those of us who have privilege of either being neurotypical, of not being disabled, of whatever those privileges intersectionally look like, to help and advocate structurally for the benefit of all of the people that we work with. And that is the responsibility of scientists who are advising policymakers, not as something separate to the research itself. So I will finish with 2 take-home points. One is that one of the things that I adore so much about this project is that a rising tide lifts all boats. When you build an inclusive workspace, everybody benefits, but you are particularly benefiting the people who are structurally oppressed. And 2, I want to call for humility from my fellow researchers, from my fellow scientists. We currently analyze very complex data in unbelievably simplistic and reductionist ways. Turns out, top secret, individual autistic people are super different from each other. There is no one coherent group that we can compare to the standard, the typical. And that is a gift, that is a great strength, that is something that we should embrace as something to enjoy about our researchers, statisticians, and data scientists, not something to hide away. Thank you so much, everyone.
The speeches we've heard today and over the past 2 weeks has shown just how important this fight is. Staff at this university deserve better, and I want to make clear that students will always stand in full solidarity with you. Today may be the last day of this round of strikes, but we know that this fight is far from over. So as we head into 2020, we will carry on fighting with you for fair pay and fair pensions, for fair working conditions and an end to casualisation, for action to tackle the gender and racial pay gaps, for an end to unsustainable workloads, for a university that is truly accessible, for a university that values its staff as it should. We will carry on standing in solidarity with staff and fighting for a better university. We know that when staff are overworked and underpaid, our education suffers. That's why it's so important that all students stand with staff and fight for the future of our education. Collectively, we're standing together and fighting back against a marketised education system that fails to value its staff and protect the interests of its students. A better university is possible. We've seen over the past 2 weeks that that is true, and we will carry on fighting for it together. Thank you.
It's been really fantastic to be able to work helping mobilise students for the strike. It can be so hard to feel like we have any power to make a difference when most of our work as students is very individualised. We're working on our own things in competition with each other. Thank you for those who've done anything to help make strike support a success. Thank you. And it's been so hopeful and inspiring. We've been challenging the seemingly solidified relationships and behaviours through our collective work. Thank you for those who shared and invited people to events, who came to breakfast runs, whether you came for one day or some people came nearly every day, which was incredible, and stood side by side with staff, people who helped to make food, who helped to make banners, who passed JCR motions, people who came to set equipment up, who volunteered their time to be part of the mentoring schemes and share their notes, enabling us to share knowledge and build our own student networks so we can be resilient and feel like we can work together to make the changes that we want and resist the narratives which are imposed from above that attempt to divide us through portraying us as consumers against staff in the marketised university. The more we reach out to one another to offer mutual support, recognising the value of offering solidarity to those in different positions to us and to those we recognise as having struggles connected to our own, the more we build the ground, fragile at first but ever more solid, on which we can transform the restrictive and sometimes destructive relations and structures that we inhabit. We're still workers, we're still students when we do this, when we're stood on the picket lines and bringing breakfast run food, but the exciting thing is the way that the strike suspends the normal order of things and give us some elasticity through which to shape what it means to be those staff and students, to act in relation to each other and change the way we think about each other.
Thank you, colleagues and students. What an enormous 8 days it's been. Roller coaster ride emotionally, but we've learnt an awful lot over the last 8 days, and we've made immense progress. But I think we're also aware of the scale of the task ahead. We've exposed this week on the picket lines, in the speeches, the talks, what Cambridge really is about. This is a massive gig economy of exploitation with a few billionaires, a few billionaire institutions exploiting people, exploiting students, exploiting staff. And it has to stop. It has to stop. And I want to thank everyone who supported us on the picket lines. And CDE, Cambridge Defend Education, are my heroes in this strike and the last strike. Everyone who's brought us a hot drink, everyone who's helped us, everyone who's just stopped and said a kind word. So, let's do some singing and some marching, but I want to say, just as we go in, remind yourself, as we go back to work, remind yourself of the feeling of solidarity and the feeling that this outside remains a universal public space, a free university. And that's what we want in there, a free university which belongs to who? It's our university. Whose university?
Our university!
Whose university?
Our university!
I just want to say a couple of words about what happens next. Immediately next, we're going to march because we think we haven't made enough noise yet this morning. We're going to march down that way and then go up past the Downing picket line, and then we are going to St Andrew's Baptist Church where there is a UCU meeting. But all our supporters are very welcome to come and join us. There's some hot drinks, there'll be some food. Come and join us. We'll be having a meeting discussing union democracy, but it's not private. You're very welcome to come and sit in, get warm. So please join us. The march is important because we need to make sure that the people in there know we've been out on the picket lines for 8 days, but we'll do it again. We did 14 days in 2018. We've done 8 days now. After Christmas, we'll be back out on the streets, out picketing, out organising, unless we hear something from the employers that makes us come back to work. But they haven't told us yet that there's anything that would get us off the picket line. We want our demands met. What we've shown is that although there are people in society who have more power than us, who have more wealth than us, we have the power of solidarity. We have the power that comes from the unity of people who are black, who are white, who are Jewish, who are Muslim, who are all religions, who are no religions. We have the power of unity between people who are disabled and people who are not. We have the power of unity between people who are here, who are migrants, and people who are not. We are one union, we are one university, we are one community, we are strong, we are growing. We have recruited at least 160 people into Cambridge UCU just since the start of this campaign, and we will recruit more. If they think that we are going back to work and it's business as usual, they are wrong. Look out for an initiative that the union is launching over the next week. Take back the lunch break. If you'd like to set up a collective lunch break where we take the full amount of time that we're needed, we're working to contract, we're not going to be doing more than our contracted hours, we're not going to be squeezing in those emails in between sessions where we're teaching or researching or admin or doing anything else. We're going to be sitting down and talking together and organising. So look out, and if you'd like to organise something like that, also students are very welcome to help us with this. We can create spaces to build the machinery for our industrial action even stronger, because we're coming back for you, Stephen Toop. On that note, I think we could do with power in a union. So,
Yeah.
we can do it together if you want.
Yeah, sure.
Have people got the words? Because Billy Bragg is possibly listening. We were tweeting at him this morning because the West Cambridge pickets were doing it. I don't know what he thinks of the singing, so.
Can you lead us in?
Okay. The power in the factory, power in the land. power in the hands of the workers. But it all amounts to nothing if together we don't stand. There is power in a union. The lessons of the past were all learned with workers' blood. The mistakes of the bosses we must pay for. From the cities and the farmlands to trenches full of mud. War's always been the boss's way, sir. The union forever defending our rights. Down with the black label workers unite. With our brothers and our sisters from many far off lands. There is power in a union. Now and all the morning that they realize brutality and the things that treat us. But who'll defend the workers who cannot organize? When the bosses set their lackeys out to cheat us. Money speaks for money, the devil for his own. Who comes to speak for the skin and the bone? More than comfort to the widow, the light to the child. There is power in the union. The union forever defending our rights. Down with the black label workers unite. With our brothers and our sisters, together we will stand. There is power in the union. Let's march! Whose university?
Our university!
Whose university?
Our university!
Our university!
Our university!
Our university! Our university! Whose university?
Our university!
Whose university?
Our university!
Students and workers! Students and workers! It's been a good strike. No, it's been entirely collective this time.